They couldn't hide their evil forever. For a while, it looked like they could. They smiled when everyone was watching. They knew exactly what to say. They knew how to make themselves look generous, caring, and misunderstood. Meanwhile, you were left wondering if anyone would ever believe what you experienced behind closed doors. Now, before I go any further, I want to be clear about something. When I use the word evil, I'm not talking about someone who's imperfect or made mistakes or is struggling. I'm talking about someone who repeatedly chooses to inflict profound harm on others, refuses accountability, and continues that pattern despite the damage they cause. That's what I mean when I say evil. There's a difference between someone who falls and someone who keeps pushing people down because they enjoy the power it gives them. Evil isn't imperfection. It's choosing harm over accountability over and over again. And if you've ever dealt with someone like that, you know how confusing it can be. Not because they fooled everyone else, but because they made you question yourself. Maybe they lied, then denied they lied. Maybe they humiliated you privately, then praised you publicly. Maybe they provoked you until you finally reacted. And suddenly your reaction became the entire conversation. You see, they never wanted to discuss what they did. They wanted everyone focused on how you responded. And that's one of the oldest distractions in the book. If they can keep defending your reaction, they never have to explain their behavior. Think about how many times you apologized while they avoided responsibility altogether. Think about how many nights you replayed conversations in your head. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Meanwhile, they slept just fine because confusion was working in their favor. You see, the more you doubted yourself, the less likely you were to challenge them. But here's what eventually happened. You stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started asking, "Why do I keep feeling this way around this person?" That question changes everything. The moment you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "Why do I keep feeling this way around them?" clarity begins. You see, unhealthy people often survive on confusion, but healthy relationships create clarity. If every conversation leaves you more confused than before, that's information. If every disagreement somehow becomes your fault, that's information. If you're always carrying the emotional weight while they carry the image, that's information. Patterns tell the truth. Words can be rehearsed. Apologies can be rehearsed. Social media can be rehearsed. Charm can be rehearsed. Patterns, though, are much harder to fake. You see, eventually you stopped listening only to what they said, and you started paying attention to what they consistently did. That is when the mask started slipping. Not necessarily for everyone else, but for you. And that's where real freedom begins. Because so many people spend years waiting for everyone else to see what they already know. Waiting for friends to understand. Waiting for families to believe them. Waiting for the person who hurt them to finally admit the truth. But healing doesn't begin when they confess. Healing begins when you stop needing the confession. Healing doesn't begin when they finally admit what they did. No. Healing begins when you stop needing the admission to trust what you've already experienced. That doesn't mean you become bitter, though. It means you become discerning. There's a difference. Bitterness says, "I hate everyone." Discernment says, "I've learned to recognize unhealthy patterns. One keeps you trapped, the other keeps you free." And here's a piece of wisdom I want you to remember. Character always outruns performance. Someone can perform for a season, but character shows up for a lifetime. You see, eventually the way that they treat people catches up to them. Eventually the same excuses stop working. Eventually the same patterns appear in new relationships, new friendships, new workplaces, because they never dealt with the person in the mirror. You see, you don't have to dictate your life to exposing them. You don't have to become obsessed with proving your story. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is quietly stepping out of the cycle and refusing to participate anymore. Because every minute you spend trying to convince someone who refuses to see is a minute you could be spending building a life that no longer revolves around them. That's where your power is. Not in exposing every lie. Not in winning every argument, not in getting the last word. No, your power is in becoming someone who no longer needs unhealthy people to validate your reality. And that's one of the reasons I wrote Phoenix from Stability to Power, because there comes a point where surviving isn't enough. You have to learn to trust yourself again, to rebuild your standards, to stop apologizing for protecting your peace, to stop confusing access with love, because everyone doesn't deserve unlimited access to you. Access should be earned by consistency, honesty, and respect, not by empty promises, not by charm, not by history alone. And the truth is, they couldn't hide their evil forever. Maybe everyone won't see it today. Maybe some people won't see it for years. Some may never see it, but that's no longer your burden. You see, your responsibility isn't to manage their image. It's to protect your peace. And the greatest victory isn't that everyone finally believes your story. The greatest victory is that you finally believe yourself. You trust your instincts. You recognize the patterns. You stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. That's freedom. That's growth. And that's how you create a future that's greater than your past. Peace, blessings, love, and power.